There was a small village surrounded by green hills and farms.
Princess Adesuwa lived in this little village.
Her father was King Osime, who ruled over the village. Adesuwa was the king's oldest daughter. She was known as a kind and gentle princess who treated the villagers well.
But Adesuwa had a difficult issue. She struggled with her whole life. She had very strong body odor that smelled so bad. Even when Adesuwa was a young girl, she smelled more worse than the other children. The bad smell got worse as Adesuwa grew up. It was a pungent, unpleasant smell that trailed behind her wherever she walked. As Princess Adesuwa grew into a young woman, the people in the village started treating her differently. They tried to stay away from Adesuwa because of her very bad smell. Behind her back, some villagers made very unkind jokes and comments about how stinky the princess was. Some mothers with little children would quickly put their children inside when they saw Adesuwa walking down the dusty village road. The young girls who used to be Adesuwa friends would turn opposite direction to avoid talking with her. This made Adesuwa very sad. There were many young men in the village and neighboring kingdoms who wished to court Adesuwa because she was pretty and the king's daughter. However, as soon as they got within 6 feet of her, they were driven away by her odor. They decided not to pursue her, despite Adesuwa's beauty and royal title. This left the princess very lonely. She stopped leaving the palace most days. Princess Adesuwa would simply stay in her bedroom and gaze out of her window, dreaming of true love and the man who could accept her smelly situation. She imagined a husband who won't care about her strong body odor, but will love her for her kind heart. But it seemed impossible.
And Adesuwa cried so many tears over feeling so alone. It was a hot, vibrant summer day in the village. Princess Adesuwa was up in her castle bedroom, fanning herself. She left her windows open, hoping to catch a breeze. Then Adesuwa heard a sound floating up from the village square. Joyous drums beating and people laughing. She leaned out of her window and saw people dancing around a bonfire, celebrating the summer fixed day. Adesuwa felt so excited. She thought maybe she could sneak out of the palace and observe the festivities without being noticed. People seemed so happy and distracted. So Princess Adesuwa quietly left the palace and tiptoed to the edge of the village square. For a few moments, no one realized she had joined them. Adesuwa stood in the shadows, watching wistfully as girls her age danced fast in their beautiful skirts. But soon a breeze blew,
carrying Adesuwa's unfortunate odor through the crowd. People wrinkled their nose, glancing around to find the source of the stinking smell. Then all eyes turned towards the lonely princess. Mouth fell open in shock before twisting into unpleasant sneers. They all pointed at Adesuwa and looking at her with disgust. Adesuwa ran away to hide behind some bushes, hoping no one would find her. But then she heard a distant steady beat of a drum growing louder and getting closer. Fearfully, she peered through the leaf to see who was approaching. To her surprise, it was a smiling young man from a neighboring village, cheerfully playing a hand drum as he walked directly towards her hiding spot. When he reached her, he stopped playing and kindly asked, "Why did you stop dancing back there? You looked so joyful and free while you were dancing." Adesuwa was stunned that this stranger had followed her all the way here, especially since he was able to detect her unusual scent. She replied, You can smell me, but still you came looking for me here. Everyone in my village laughs at my dancing." The young man responded gently, "Don't worry about them. I think you are a wonderful dancer. Please ignore their unkind words and keep dancing with happiness and freedom." Adesuwa was surprised with the young man's kind words. She realized he didn't really care about their differences. She decided she would ignore her cruel neighbors and dance freely. The young man started playing a cheerful rhythm on his hand drum. Adesuwa was unsure at first, but after a moment, she began swaying lightly in time with the music. The stranger's smile even grew wider as he watched her start to move. He was playing his drum faster while he fixed his eyes warmly on Adesuwa. Adesuwa could feel he was truly seeing her. and not just her outward appearance, but her heart and soul. For the first time she could remember, she felt completely accepted, just as she was. This realization completely freed her spirit. She let go of her self-consciousness and began to dance. The rhythm seems to flow and filling her with joy. With the stranger admiring gaze holding hers, she felt liberated and truly expresses her love for dance. When Princess Adesuwa finally stopped dancing, she and the stranger held each other's gaze for a moment. Adesuwa felt happy from the joyful dancing. For the first time, she felt accepted by someone. The two of them suddenly started laughing together in their shared happiness. After they caught their breath, the young man told Adesuwa that his name is Osage. He lives in a village close by and plays drum for events and celebration. Osage asked Adesuwa if she will meet him in the same spot tomorrow. He wanted to talk more and maybe plays his drum for her to dance more. His warm smile towards her simply showed that he greatly enjoyed their time together. Princess Adesuwa simply said yes, that he will meet him at the same spot tomorrow. Her heart felt lighter than it had in years. All her life she has been shunned and lonely due to her odor. But this stranger had accepted her and even delighted in her dancing. Adesuwa hurried home and her head spinning from the excitement from being seen for the first time. She was happy that she found someone who wanted to meet again. For the first time ever, she had made a real friend and her heart swelled with optimism and excitement about their next meeting behind the bushes. Each afternoon, she will sneak out of the palace where Osage has already been waiting for her. The two new friends enjoy long, lively conversation, telling stories and jokes that had them laughing for hours. While they talk, Osage joyfully picked up his drumstick while he played energetic rhythm, which delighted Princess Adesuwa and inspired her to dance with freedom and joy she had never known. She let go of all her self-consciousness about her older issues. He made her feel accepted. She was able to lose herself in the music. Her dancing enhances their connection even more. He looked at her in admiration. Over several weeks, their initial connection grew into deep friendship, and warm affection felt on both sides. As Princess Adesuwa fell in love with Osage and felt his equal caring for her in return, a part of her ached secretly because of their different station in life. He a common struggling musician and she a royal with obligations to marry well for political ties. Though the princess wished desperately in her most private dreams that social status would not interfere and they could be bonded in marriage, for she has never felt so happy and accepted as she did with Osage. One afternoon, as Princess Adesuwa and Osage sat closely together, talking and laughing as usual, he reached closer and gently took both of her hands in his. His expression became more serious and full of emotions. Osage told Adesuwa that he cared for her deeply, and he wanted them to be together forever. He asked her to marry him, explaining his wish that their two villages could be joined through their union. Osage said he couldn't care about royal customs or getting permission. He only knew that being with Adesuwa made him truly happy, and he wanted them to build a life bonded in love. Princess Adesuwa was overcome with joy at his heartfelt proposal. She cried tears of happiness, having wanted nothing more than being Osage's wife, but assumed it could never come to pass. Adesuwa felt she doesn't deserve such a wonderful man, willing to overcome all social barriers to declare his unconditional love for her. In her excitement, Adesuwa threw her arms around at Osage, whispering, "Yes, yes," against his smiling lips as they shared a long, tender kiss. She had never imagined a love so free. When they finally pushed back, faces flashed and beaming with giddy smiles, the lovers made enthusiastic plans.
still high on new possibilities. The princess and the young man agreed that they will share their wonderful news with their parents. They will first ask Adesuwa's parents, the king and queen, for permission to marry. Then travel to Osage's family to gain approval and blessings too. The both lovebirds hold their hand tight on their new journey together towards a future as husband and wife. However, as soon after their engagement, immense tragedies struck the villages and Princess Adesuwa's happy new world came crashing down. A deadly, fast-spreading plague hit the villages. The early symptoms were a raging fever and skin covered in large boils like blisters. Within days, those infected will go into violent fits of madness, then fall deadly still. It was a horrific, painful way to die. In desperate efforts to contain the terrifying outbreak, leaders of all the villages came together to completely seal off all their borders. No one was permitted to travel between the towns for any reason. If anyone tried to flee, they would be captured and quarantined, or even killed on sight by fearful guards. As the plague raged on week after week, residents hid in their family homes, terrified to interact with anyone who might be infected. Friends and neighbors boarded up their doors and windows, only emerging briefly for provisions before scaring back to self-imposed isolation. For Princess Adesuwa, weeks turned into months of being cut off from Osage. She was trapped within the palace as the plague spread hungrily. All Adesuwa's hopeful joy at the future with Osage faded into a daily fear for his safety, without any way to reach him. The villages remained frozen in their quarantine isolation for endless months. The plague ran its course. Adesuwa and Osage could only pray the other was still alive. Despite isolating herself within the royal palace, eventually Princess Adesuwa woke up feeling feverish, with the terrifying boils beginning to spread across her arms. The plague had reached her. The princess grew gravely ill over subsequent days. Her body ranged in fevers so severe that her dressing and her bedsheet were constantly soaked in sweat. The crushing fatigue from fighting the illness left Adesuwa weak to even lift her head for a sip of water. Seeing their eldest daughter suffering was so agonizing for the king and queen. They definitely tried every traditional remedy and modern medicine the royal doctors offered up, from herbal baths to English baths meant to draw out the disease. But nothing worked to ease Adesuwa's worsening condition. The situation became tiring as the ghostly, pale and motionless princess suffered before their eyes. Finally, the queen recalled an up-cure tonic an old village woman had once brewed when Adesuwa was little. Though repulsed, she had the daughter mix the potion made of bitter roots and weeks-old animal blood. They gently spooned the revolting concoction into Adesuwa's mouth. Miraculously, just a day later, the princess finally sneezed. The strange concoction finally brought Princess Adesuwa back to life. Princess Adesuwa had survived the illness that killed others. Overjoyed, her parents wept thankful tears as their daughter's fever broke fully. After several days of rest and recovery, Princess Adesuwa finally felt strong enough to carefully stand up from her sick bed. She shuffled slowly across the room, one hand trailing the wall for balance. Adesuwa made her way to the full-length looking glass standing in the corner. As she peered anxiously on her reflection, the princess gasped aloud in shock. She barely recognized herself. The plague-vicious fever had tormented her body for so many days. Her skin now looked fresher and softer than Adesuwa could ever remember, smiling in joy that her figure appeared slimmer now too. Adesuwa lifted her hand to sniff her armpit for odor, but the odor was no more. The herbal medicine might have cured the body odor. Princess Adesuwa was so happy, now inhaling a sweet,
scented skin in delighted disbelief. This wonderful cure was like a miracle. Words couldn't express her happiness to finally be free from the odor. The odor isolated her since childhood. She was nearly weeping in her happiness. Adesuwa rushed happily to share the good news with her parents, the king and queen. She wanted everyone to know immediately that the infection that had nearly killed her brought her new confidence and joy into her life. After many more months, finally the rampant plague began dying away, and the strict quarantine could be lifted at last as Princess Adesuwa walked freely through the castle for the first time in over a year. She held her breath nervously. She still remembered vividly the last time she had tried to join the festivities in town, only to be treated cruelly. Whispered insult and people putting their children away to avoid her smell. But today, no one shouted from Adesuwa's approach. Villagers smiled and gazed at Adesuwa for her beautiful skin. Adesuwa was startled to hear about her glowing skin and health. Some even stepped closer to her with their wide eyes, drinking in her beauty, looking entranced in her presence. The local young men in particular couldn't seem to stop watching the princess, their mouths hanging up wide open with affection. For the first time she could recall, Adesuwa moved through her kingdom, feeling strong, confident, and truly accepted. Her recent beauty has transformed her into a village belle that no one could ignore. Princess Adesuwa was dizzy with the thrill of acceptance and admiration from the villagers she used to hide from. Caught up in self-pride over her cured odor and newly found beauty, she had nearly forgotten her loyal love, Osage. But walking through town, she spotted a familiar figure bounding eagerly down the road towards her. It was Osage, her dear friend, companion, and bridegroom-to-be, who she hasn't seen over a year since the plague hit. Adesuwa's first impulse was to run straight into his hands with teary reliefs for safety. But she caught herself short, doubts surfacing. Surely now she was too high above for someone of common status like Osage. She was a pampered royal, and he a drummer boy, without notable wealth or family name to elevate him. Different thoughts swirling insecurely. The princess constructed her face into a formal distance mark before Osage could reach her. When he did, the drummer boy desperately delight shone through as he cried, "My princess, how I have mixed basking in your beauty and radiance." He moved towards her, as if expecting a warm embrace. But Adesuwa stood reserved and still, making no move to welcome him back after their long separation. Osage joyfully stepped forward to hug Princess Adesuwa, so thankful to see his beloved again after agonizing months apart. But the princess recoiled sharply away from his opening arms. A look of deep surprise and hurt flashed across Osage's face at her rejection. Confused, Adesuwa stated that she no longer wants to continue the relationship. She told him after enduring the plague, she is now beautiful than ever. She now moved in different higher social realms than a common boy like Osage ever could. Osage looked deeply hurt by Adesuwa, his anguish evident on his face. "But Adesuwa, I love you," he protested passionately. "These months of silence only made me love you more. I can do anything to make you my wife." Princess Adesuwa looked at Osage angrily and said to him, "You will address me as Princess Adesuwa," she commanded coldly. "This conversation ends here. I deserve someone better than you." She spat out the words, feeling a cruel satisfaction in them. Then, without a backward glance or a pause to listen to his heartbroken cry, Adesuwa turned away, marching off with determination. She blocked out Osage's anguished shouts, her chin held high. In Adesuwa's mind, cutting off their connection will close that chapter of her life forever. Now she had plenty of nobles and suitors begging for her attention. In the following months, Princess Adesuwa continued with her royal lifestyle, acting as if the loyal drummer boy had never touched her heart. She entertained extravagant marriage proposals from respected lords and princes, one after another. These influential men had once turned away from Adesuwa in disgust, but now shamelessly they showered her with flattery.
eager for the attention of the newly transformed princess. Adesuwa smiled as she soaked up their compliment to her flawless skin and graceful movement, praises that she could never have imagined receiving before. Despite the adoration, she couldn't shake the regrets beating at her heart for chasing Osage away harshly. Weeks passed and her father, King Osime, urged her to quickly choose a husband from the numerous suitors begging for her hand in marriage. Adesuwa declared that she will host a wrestling tournament where the kingdom's strongest men would compete for the chance to marry her. Upon hearing this, men of great strength traveled from far and wide, eager for the opportunity to win the hand of the renowned beauty. In the days leading up to the tournament, Adesuwa became obsessed with enhancing her appearance to outshine everyone. Her maids tirelessly groomed her, but in her pursuit for outward appearance, Adesuwa neglected basic cleanliness, even forgot regular baths. Slowly but surely, Adesuwa's old body odor returned. On the morning of the wrestling tournament, the weather was perfect to showcase Princess Adesuwa's beauty. She entered the bubbling arena, adorned with jewelries, aiming to dazzle the crowd. As Adesuwa lifted her delicate hand to wave at the cheery crowd, their excitement suddenly changed. A surprised whisper suddenly spread quickly among the people. They moved away in disgust, wrinkling their noses at the strong smell coming from the princess. Embarrassed men hid their faces, looking away to avoid eye contact. Princess Adesuwa felt embarrassed when the tournament participants shook their heads and left, wanting to avoid her. The villagers also watching the tournament also followed and left, talking quietly about her body odor and holding their nose in disgust. Adesuwa felt utterly crushed and ashamed. She quickly removed her royal fancy clothes and jewelry, dropping them down in the deck. With tears in her eyes, she quickly turned and ran away as fast as she could. As Adesuwa ran, her eyes landed at one person standing alone across the tournament ground. It was Osage. He stood tall and straight, looking at her with kindness as she hurried away. After a moment, Osage walked directly purposely to her, his face both showing concern and sadness for her distress. When he reached her, he spoke gently to her. "My dear precious one, how could you think so little of our love and what we meant to each other? Why would you give up on our love for the fleeting attention of others?" Tears rolled down Adesuwa's cheek as she shook her head. "Please forgive me, Osage. I made a terrible mistake, thinking that looking beautiful on the outside could be more important than our love. I was so careless, and now I have lost the most important thing in my life, your love and care."